Welcome to Scary and Creepy Stuff, the podcast dedicated to everything that is scary and or creepy. I'm your host, the Raven Guy. Join me in a world I created for anything scary and creepy. Sit or lay down, make yourself at home, get a beverage of choice, and just relax as we enter the world of scary and creepy stuff. Season 1, Episode 1. The First Time Killers. Whenever we talk about serial killers, we think scary, crazy, and I could never do that. But we all have the same components inside us that doesn't separate us from becoming a serial killer. It's the execution of doing it that separates us from going on a rapid murder rage. But the term serial killer is someone who murders at least two people in separate events that occurred at different times. While serial murder is not formalized by any legal code, the crimes of serial killers have been sized up by the media and public over the years, especially cases where there are a lot of victims, or where the murders are carried out in a gruesome style. On this list, we will find the 7 most notorious serial killers of all time. Number 7. Jack the Ripper. We may not have a face to place to one of the most notorious murder sprees of Victorian times. We all know his name is Jack the Ripper. This killer appeared in Whitechapel, London district in 1888. The way Jack murdered was gruesome, to put it in the lightest form. 5 women, all prostitutes, and multiple corpses. The only thing the police could say about Jack was he could have been a surgeon, butcher, or someone who was skilled with a scalpel. The way the bodies were mutilated shows Jack had a skill with knives. Although many suspects have been named, till this day, the killer has never been identified. Number 6. Jeffrey Dahmer. Wisconsin, Milwaukee. Gruesome details were discovered in the home of Jeffrey Dahmer. When he was 18 years old, from 1978 till 1991, Jeffrey would have killed about 17 people, mostly young men of color. The killings were documented in photos, mutilated bodies, body parts strewn across the apartment. He would place the bodies in a barrel filled with acid. That way he disposed of the bodies. The thing that draws people in about Jeffrey was his one victim who was made into a sex zombie. Drugging the young boy, he took him home, drilled a hole in his head, and poured acid into his brain. A while later, this sex zombie escaped and was sitting with a group of girls. They noticed he wasn't all well, but Jeffrey came to the rescue and he rescued his creation. Unfortunately for Dahmer, his sex zombie wasn't a success, and he had to go and look for another victim. In his lifetime, he would spend time in prison 2 times, first for molestation and the second for murder. He was killed by a fellow inmate in 1994. Number 5. Harold Shipman. Dr. Death is believed to have killed 218 patients, but experts would say he could have killed 250 easily. This doctor practiced in London and between 1972 and 1998 worked in 2 different offices. While doing this, he would practice his Dr. Death given name. Red flags were raised when an undertaker who was surprised by the amount of cremation certificates were issued by Shipman. Most cases were elderly women who would die in a hospital, not during the night, but during the day. Police mishandled this investigation. That's the main reason Shipman got away with it for so long. But when greed started to set in, he got caught by containing one of his victims to name him a beneficiary in her will. This made the victim's daughter very suspicious. He was finally convicted in 2000 and ended his life in 2004. Number 4. John Wayne Gacy, an outgoing suburban construction worker who was involved in politics and even acted as a clown at birthday parties. But he was no innocent clown. When a 15-year-old boy, last seen with Gacy, went missing, suspicion started to grow. This wasn't the first time families pointed fingers at Gacy when children went missing, but it was the first time the police took any of these complaints seriously. With a search warrant granted, they had the power to enter Gacy's home. Instant smell hit them. It was the smell of dead bodies, at least 30 of them. The smell came from the 4-foot crawl space under Gacy's home. He was convicted for 33 counts of murders, with added charges of rape and torture, and his life was ended in 1994 with a lethal injection. Number 3. H. Holmes. Moving to Chicago. At the time, Chicago had its fair share of serial killers, but none of them are more haunting than H. Holmes, turning a 3-story hotel into a death motel, fitting in gas lines, secret passages, torching devices and other nefarious contraptions, even going as far to soundproof the hotel. The gas allowed Holmes to knock out his guests to perform the worst acts humanly possible, usually ending on his surgical table. What happened to the dead bodies? Well, they were burned in a hotel's furnace, selling skeletons to medical schools and running life insurance scams. In his time, he would claim more than 30 murders. One of his fellow scammers turned him in after falling short on a financial agreement. In 1896, he was hanged. Number 2. Pedro Lopez, a monster of Andes. Not even 20 years in prison, he was released because of good behavior. 20 years has passed and his whereabouts remain unknown. That means one of the world's most prolific serial killers might still be out there. Pedro Lopez was linked to more than 300 murders in his native hometown in Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru. 1/3 of his murders were tribal women. When Lopez was arrested in 1980, police found the graves of more than 50 of his preteen victims. Later, he was convicted of murdering 110 girls in Ecuador, and he confessed to 240 more murders in Colombia and Peru. Number 1. Ted Bundy. The Western U.S. was his hunting ground, with an unknown number of murders piling up. His preferred prey was college-age women. From Washington and Oregon, all the way to Utah and Colorado, Bundy loved the attention he gathered from killing, and the U.S. didn't mind giving it to him. Once arrested for kidnapping in Colorado, he was taken into custody in Colorado but escaped custody. He then decided to move to Florida, where he would kill multiple times. Bundy's final arrest and the aftermath captured the eyes and ears of the nation. He was his own lawyer during what is known to be the first televised murder trial. In a way, he was welcoming the interviews and boasted with his fans he had created. His life ended in 1989 in the electric chair. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to my podcast. Please make sure you subscribe or follow the podcast, share it with everyone you know and love. And remember, you will always be welcome in the world we created, especially for those who want to join it.